Agile Principle number 7. Working software is the primary measure of progress. Imagine you join a new development team. You're excited because they're working on a new piece of software that will revolutionize the industry. It's your first day and you can't wait to get up to speed and start contributing. At the first daily face-to-face meeting, they touch on the progress of current stories and coordinate the work for the day. You don't understand all the lingo yet, so there's a slight sense of fear mixed with excitement, but that's okay. You know you've got the skills they need, and it's just a matter of ramping up to become familiar with the new acronyms and tools so you can start helping this project change the world. At the end of the face-to-face, something happens that you haven't seen before. Strange would be an understatement. The Scrum Master walks over to the wall with a measuring device like what the doctor uses to measure height. One by one, each person is measured and recorded. You follow the example, feeling a bit odd, but not quite feeling comfortable asking about what is going on. The results are tallied and added to a chart. The team gives a small cheer when the numbers are added to the board. It's clear that the cumulative height of the team yesterday was 68 inches less than today. The Scrum Master congratulates the team on making progress and encourages them to keep up the good work. You've got a pretty good suspicion that your addition to the team accounts for most of those 68 inches. Maybe it's just a goofy way to say welcome to the team? The weirdness of it all keeps coming back to your mind, but you don't really get a chance to ask anyone about it as you're busy onboarding and getting everything set up. The next day, the same thing happens, except this time the graph doesn't go up. The Scrum Master is visibly disappointed and agitated. The next day, the graph trends down again. You realize that you chose a pair of shoes with thinner soles, which you try not to draw any attention to as you discreetly step behind some furniture, hoping no one will notice. You don't want to be blamed for making the height go down until you at least know what's going on. The Scrum Master is once again disappointed, but encourages the team to try harder to make progress on their cumulative height so the project can succeed. By now, you're beginning to suspect that you've either joined a team of lunatics or gone crazy yourself. Does this sound silly? Why would Agile need to tell us how to measure progress? Well, I hope you've never joined a team that was using cumulative height, sum of shoe size, daily donuts eaten, or vertical velocity of standing up during the daily meeting as a measure of success. It is far too easy for a software team to measure similar, useless metrics. Even reasonable metrics can be detrimental if the team confuses them with what really matters. That's why Agile makes it very clear how to measure progress in Agile Principle number 7. Working software is the primary measure of progress. But once you know what the team is going to consider the primary measure of progress, it's all good, right? It's a simple principle that's easy to follow, so let's buy a bunch of incrementally taller platform shoes and move on to something else. Not quite. This is a principle that many teams and many managers tend to gloss over because it seems so trivial. It's not. It is a huge deal. What a team uses as their primary measure of progress has significant impact on daily decisions. If a team isn't aligned on how they define progress, it isn't pretty because it becomes nearly impossible to make decisions collectively. For example, let's say half of your team considers working software to be the primary measure of progress, and the other half considers percentage of work completed to be the best way to measure progress. You'll end up with half the team focused on decisions that get code through the process and into the customer's hands, and the other half trying to get requirement documents finished since that will get them to the 30% completion mark. Conversations between those two factions about what to do next aren't going to go anywhere because they aren't measuring progress in the same way. It's going to be impossible for them to agree on what to do next. It isn't because people have ill intentions, it's because they're using completely different things as their primary measure of progress. To be fair, most Agile teams will recognize that the do all the requirements up front approach is waterfall. So when that type of conflict shows up, it's usually not too hard to make a case for following the Agile principles. However, the degree of difficulty goes up significantly with slightly more subtle differences in what is measured. For example, I usually encourage teams to differentiate between user stories and tickets. A user story is something that is delivered as working software that the customer can experience, touch, and use. A ticket is something else that the team might want to track, but is completed without delivering functionality that allows the user to do something they couldn't do before. So, functionality to let the users reset their passwords would be a story. But if you need to fill out corporate paperwork to request an updated SSL certificate and want to track that separately from a user's story, that would just be a ticket. It would also be a ticket if you wanted to track the work of creating architectural diagrams, doing security audit, or creating a proof of concept that isn't something you are delivering to the customer. The idea here is that while all those things we represent in tickets may be important, they aren't part of the primary definition of progress. Doing a security audit may help you deliver user stories that are part of your primary definition of progress. You might not be allowed to deploy your code to production without it, but it doesn't achieve that progress in and of itself. This does two things. First, it encourages teams to find a way to make work more iterative and bring everything necessary to deliver a user story into the process of delivering that user story. For example, I've worked with teams where they embedded security experts in the team, so each user story gets the security sign-off as they are developed. This meant there wasn't a separate ticket required for a security sign-off. It was just part of what was necessary for delivering each story. This helps make sure there's no hidden work, makes the process much more predictable, which makes it possible to optimize flow. The second thing this does is make sure the team is ultra-focused on doing just what is needed. When tickets, or non-user story work, start being counted as progress, it becomes a mechanism for sneaking in work that isn't absolutely necessary. When you're measuring your progress as user story that delivers functionality to the user, principle number 7, and you are working with business every day, principle number 4, and you are using face-to-face communication, principle number 6, there are all kinds of opportunities to reduce the scope and focus on what brings the most value to the user. If you have team members who are trying to take a waterfall approach to development, but call it Agile, this idea of primarily measuring progress as working software from the user's perspective will cause all sorts of angst and pushback because it requires iterative delivery in ways that completely upend waterfall. Instead of spending lots of time building out the database layer first, the team will have to build out just what is needed for the user-focused story, deliver that, and then iterate if they want to be able to show they are making progress. Spending months designing and building a delivery pipeline before starting on the application would not result in being able to show any progress. Instead, they will need to build just what is necessary to deploy the first user story because that delivers something that is being measured as progress. Each subsequent iteration will evolve the pipeline with anything new that is needed to deliver that particular story. Agile Principle number 7. Working software is the primary measure of progress. As trivial as it sounds, any team that doesn't fully embrace this principle is setting themselves up for failure. While we can easily recognize that measuring the height of a team and calling that progress is ridiculous, there are many other things teams are prone to measure and call progress other than working software. When a team is willing to fully embrace working software as the primary measure of progress, they set themselves up for rapid feedback and success.